So welcome everyone. Hello friends. Welcome back to Funding Fridays. I am Effie McLaughlin. I'm the Director of Grants and Research Programs in the Office of Research. And for those of you who don't know me, I direct many of the internal seed grant funding programs offered by the Central Office of Research, as well as many of our research development activities and services, of which this is one. So welcome to the penultimate Funding Fridays webinar of our 2021-2022 season. Today we are extremely pleased to have the Research Foundation in the house. Many members, many colleagues of ours from the Research Foundation are here to help us explore this topic of the Research Foundation's post-award management and web report sort of introduction primer. Our lead speakers today are Sean McPartland, who is the Director of Customer Service Development for the Research Foundation, and our returning speaker, Pauline Papoulis, who is the Director of the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs at Queens College, who you may remember from other exciting webinars, such as budgeting for federal agency grants. So the Funding Fridays webinar series is a webinar series that we developed in partnership with the Office of Library Services and the Research Foundation. And the goal of this webinar series is to create a living resource for research development support and information for researchers across the university. So please check out our Funding Friday schedule and the videos of past webinars on our website. And also please make sure to join us for our next webinar on May 20th, where we're going to be discussing limited submissions opportunities and the new limited submissions website that I am developing on our Office of Research webpage. So this webinar is being recorded, as I had mentioned. So if you're not comfortable being recorded, please keep your camera off. And it will be made available, as Remy had also mentioned, in the chat. Remy Dar is my colleague from the Office of Sponsored Research and will helping me monitor the time and the chat in today's webinar. And so I encourage all of you to provide feedback on this webinar, and also please do make suggestions for topics that you would like us to address. This webinar itself was created and developed in direct response to some feedback that I had gotten from some PIs and actually people in offices of sponsored research that they'd really like sort of an introductory overview of how the initial post-award process works. And I'm very open to ideas for topics for our webinar series for the next academic year. So please do not hesitate to reach out to me. So just a little bit of housekeeping. The presentation is going to run for about 40-45 minutes. Sean's going to start us off, and he will introduce several of his RF colleagues who will contribute their expertise to the presentation. I believe our friend Nick Jones is actually running the slideshow. And then Pauline is going to jump in and will provide the sort of much needed perspective of a college grants officer who's been assisting faculty and PIs with all aspects of pre and post award administration for over 20 years at Queens College. So she will definitely have be able to contribute on that level from a college-based perspective. So we plan to leave ample time at the end to answer any questions. I mean, as I mentioned, my colleague Remy Dar and I will be keeping time and monitoring the chat. Do feel free at any time during the presentation to type your questions into the chat, and we will go back to those, and we'll make every effort to get to all of your questions at the end of the presentation. So Sean, if you would please like to take it away.
Sure, thank you, Effie. And again, Effie, thank you for inviting us to present at one of your series of webinars you hold monthly. And today we will be presenting a high-level walkthrough focusing on the roles and responsibilities of grants and contracts, finance, and the PI as it aligns with grants and project activity. Now, we have 3 speakers today and a bench of RF subject matter experts to respond to your questions at the end of the presentation. And as Effie said, we will be presenting for approximately 45 minutes. And we'll be answering questions in the last 15 minutes of the presentation. So again, please hold your questions until the Q&A portion, and we'll stay as long as folks want regarding answering any questions. I do want to introduce our presenters. If you did make a mention from Queens College, I would like to have Pauline, the grants officer, just say hello. So Pauline, if you could just say hello to the group.
Hi, everyone. It's Pauline Papoulis, as Effie mentioned, Director of Research and Sponsored Programs at Queens College.
Thank you. Also, we will have Raphael from our RF Finance Department. And Rafael, can you introduce yourself and your team?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Rafael Almada. I am the General Accounting Manager that's overseeing the agency fund group team, managing all your 9 ledgers. Vanessa, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa Betancourt, and I'm at the from the Research Foundation Finance Department. My title is Payment Analyst, and I assist with the Pcard Department.
Thank you. And Nick, can you introduce yourself in Grants and Contracts, who will be one of our main speakers?
Sure. My name is Nick Jones, and I am the Manager of Private Programs in the Grants and Contracts Department.
And also, we have Millicent from Grants and Contracts, who will be introducing the team from Grants and Contracts, who will be on the call as subject matter experts to answer any questions that you folks may have. Millicent, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Hi, good morning. My name is Millicent Liang, Assistant Director, State Programs, and we have other team members from Grants and Contracts. Gary, can you introduce yourself?
Is
Gary,
Gary?
you're going to have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I think you're muted.
You're going to have to unmute yourself, Gary.
We could come back to Gary. Yang, can you introduce yourself?
Oh, it seems to be muted.
Oh.
So
Well, we can.
why
Hello.
don't we just, there you go. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, sorry about that. I had some issues. Young Huang, I'm the State Manager in Grants and Contract Department.
Victor?
Maybe people can introduce themselves when they present during their presentation. You should all be able to unmute yourselves.
Yeah, there might be some issues when we use remote desktop. So we have Gary Liang, Assistant Director, Federal Programs. Yang already introduced himself. Victor Zakowski, who's the Release Time Administrator, Summer Salary Coordinator, and Marek Bagaj, who's the Program Administrator, PSC Programs here. And now we pass this back to Nick.
Thank you, Millie. As
Nick,
I mentioned, my name is Nick Jones, and I am the Manager of the Private Programs in the Grants and Contracts Department. Presenting along with me is Rafael Ahumada, who is the General Accounting Manager in the Finance Department. Today, we'll be going over many things, but the main purpose of our presentation is simplified into 2 bullet points. Introducing the Grants and Contracts Department and Finance Department, and understanding roles and responsibilities. Now, let's get back to that first bullet point. We want you, the PIs, to know who we are, what we do, and what we can do to enhance procedures, to understand what tools are out there to make it easier for you to get what you need done. To do all this, we need to make sure that everyone understands their roles and responsibilities, what they need to be doing so that we can successfully work together as a team. Throughout the presentation, you will constantly hear this come up, and everything that we go over as this will only help us in the long run. Now, to accomplish this purpose, we have some learning objectives. Now, the learning objectives are the roles and responsibilities of the project administrator, or PA, and the assistant project administrator, or APA. The roles and responsibilities of the PI, post-award management through Grants and Contracts and Finance Department, and understanding the web report. And understanding the web report and using it to your benefit could help or prevent a lot of potential problems. Web reports are a great tool to help you with managing your award funds. Just about every transaction or item we mentioned today is cataloged on the web reports. And we're going to show you how to use them to their capacity so that you can properly track your award activity. All of these tools that you'll be learning will hopefully make these objectives a reality. So what's our goal today? Today's goal, the clarity and understanding of the post-award management administered by the Grants and Contracts and Finance Department, as well as how to utilize the web report. Remember, our goal today is to show you how we can be of service and make your life easier. By clarifying everyone's roles and responsibilities and by showing you how to utilize the web report to the best of your ability. All of those learning objectives will be rolled up into today's goals, which brings us next to our agenda. Post-award management, award setup, forward funding versus guarantee, recovery derived accounts, web reports, budgets and financial management, key contacts. So let me just give you a quick overview of the Grants and Contracts Department. Grants and Contracts is responsible for managing nearly 4,000 active sponsored projects on behalf of CUNY colleges and professional schools. Grants and Contracts manages all projects from inception to completion. The department shares responsibility for engaging in numerous program and financial audits that may emerge. Staff is organized in teams consisting of a project administrator or PA and an assistant project administrator or APA. Each team is responsible for overseeing every facet of a portfolio that averages 200 projects. So in Grants and Contracts and Finance, your projects will be managed by an assigned project administrator and assistant project administrator or PA/APA team. They are assigned by either funding source, sponsor, or college. Throughout the life of a specific project, they will be your contacts at the Research Foundation. If you need any guidance regarding rules and regulations or have any financial or budgetary questions, they will be your contact. So as you can see, GNC is quite the busy team. As for the Finance Department oversees the finances of RF CUNY and its subsidiaries. Finance Department staff prepare consolidated financial statements, maintain general ledgers, oversee all financial transactions, and generate various reports for management. The department manages all investments, corporate payroll functions, insurance, accounts receivable, and handles the issuance of all RF CUNY payments. Finance contributes directly to campus finances by calculating and negotiating facilities and administrative rates. As you can see, the Finance Department handles a variety of things, and they can provide some ad hoc reports if necessary. So what is our mission? The mission for the GNC and Finance Departments, they support and advance the Research Foundation's mission by providing management and expertise in the financial administration of sponsored awards to ensure that funds are spent appropriately and that accurate and timely information is provided to the respective sponsor and the university community. We are here to administer your awards, make sure things are aligned with the sponsor rules and regulations so that you can accomplish your project objectives and goals without any hiccups. To accomplish all this, we need to work together as a team, which is why it is important to understand roles and responsibilities. Now, along the lines of teamwork, one thing you'll notice today is how the different departments work in tandem. So this brings me to the first part of our agenda, post-award management. The Personal Action Form, or EPAF, release time and summer salary, e-payment request or e-procurement, purchase cards or Pcards, contract manager for ICAs, and subawards. So there are dual responsibilities that are involved here with the PI and Grants and Contracts that we will go over. Starting with the PAF or EPAF. As many of you know, in order to put people on payroll, EPAFs need to be created. When an EPAF is created and submitted by the PI or someone else on the account that the PI has designated with such access, for the PA and APA team's approval, they will verify a few items. PA/APA team will verify the budget code to make sure the expense is in line with the sponsor approved budget, the employment period to make sure that the expense falls within the budget period, and the total amount of the PAF, which includes salary, fringe benefits, and MTA tax to ensure that there are enough funds remaining to absorb this expense. If there is an issue with the EPAF for any reason, and it is not something that could just simply be clarified via like a phone or telephone call or email, The PA/APA team will not be able to approve the EPAF. An email will then notify the person who submitted the EPF that it was not approved. It is now the PI's responsibility to contact the PA/APA team to discuss a solution to resolve the given issue. Once the issue has been discussed and there's mutual agreement as to what needs to be adjusted, the EPAF will need to be modified accordingly and resubmitted for approval by the PI. Since this is your grant, you are responsible for making these changes, as we cannot make assumptions and make the changes ourselves. The audit trail will need to indicate that the PI or submitter made the modification. After an EPAF is approved, an encumbrance for the employee will show up on the web report and timesheets can then be submitted. Release time. Release time. This is the effort you'll be applying to a project. The process of charging release time on a project starts with the release time form or the staff effort notice, or STN. Your grants office will have this form, as the form needs to be filled out by both the GO or grants officer and the PI. The form needs to be filled out based on the account's approved budget for release time and the percent effort being put forth on the project, and then submitted to grants and contracts for approval. The form should be submitted as close to the budget period start date as possible. If there are no issues and the SEN is fully signed and approved, it is entered into the effort reporting system, resulting in an encumbrance on the sponsored account. This encumbrance is reduced and funds get expensed at the end of each month, covered on the time frame provided on the SEN. Now, release time certification is semester-based, and once a semester has fully passed, a PI must certify the submitted effort of those release time activity on their account using the effort reporting system. Summer salary. This is only available for faculty for the months of June through August. Summer salary is additional compensation for faculty members who perform on sponsor-funded awards outside of the 9-month academic year. A summer salary appointment needs to be submitted by the PI through the summer salary system on the RF website. The appointment is like the creation of a PAF, except there is a secondary approval by the grants office before it comes to the PA/APA team for approval. If it looks okay and abides by any sponsor restrictions, then the PA/APA team will approve it. Once approved, an encumbrance gets created on the web report. In terms of the RF, our role is basically done at this point. Now, the reason why I say this is that we do not pay the summer salary. The CUNY payroll office pays out summer salary. In order to receive payment, the next thing you need to do is complete the payment authorization for any period that you worked in the summer salary system. Each of the 3 summer months is broken into 2 pay periods for this payment authorization submission process. As you have completed and submitted the payment authorization information, the grants office will once again need to give a secondary approval and approve the payment authorization. It is at this time that the encumbrance on your account will become an expense on that web report. But this does not signify when you will get paid. As I previously mentioned, the CUNY payroll office pays summer salary, and they will have their own pay schedule, and payment will be made according to that schedule. The last step of this process that you will need to complete when the summer period has fully passed is to go into the summer salary system and certify the submitted effort. The PI of a project will need to certify the effort of all summer salary activity on their account. So if there's another faculty member being paid summer salary on your project, you as the PI will need to certify their effort. If it is not certified, CUNY does not get reimbursed for the summer salary. And Pauline, I know you wanted to add some information regarding release time and summer salary.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. It's Pauline. I have a comment regarding release time and summer salary from the college's grants office point of view. Contact your grant office, dean, or chair regarding release time and how it's calculated on your specific campus. Each campus is different. Being released from teaching and effort devoted to a grant are not the same. Sponsors are interested in the time devoted to the project, either in percent of effort or person months dedicated as indicated in your proposal. You can devote effort regardless of whether or not you are released from teaching. Summer salary is also effort devoted to the project. It is important that you do not reduce the effort indicated in the proposal without prior approval from the sponsor, regardless of when the effort is devoted, whether it's academic or summer. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Pauline. Okay, the next thing we're going to go over is the e-payment request, or as we call them, e-pays. The PI or designee creates an e-payment request, which is first reviewed and approved by our procurement and payable department. Once approved by P&P, it is forwarded to the PA/APA team, as they are the ones who provide fiscal approval. They will review the e-pay and approve it against the budget and sponsor regulations if there are any. After it is approved by the PA/APA team, the transaction will show up on the web report as a pending transaction. When something is pending, it is highlighted in blue in the transaction detail. The approved transaction will then be posted overnight, so it is no longer pending the next day, and F&A or indirect costs will be charged if applicable. If at any point there is an issue with the e-payment and additional documentation is needed, the person who submitted the request will be notified. If the issues cannot be resolved, the e-payment will be returned to the submitter. The next thing is purchase card. A purchasing card or a P-card is a debit card that allows a PI or authorized project staff to purchase goods and supplies and incur travel costs on projects. The P-card purchases are treated like advances, as you must submit all of your receipts to account for the expenses via the P-card reconciliation system on the RF website. P-cards are not for personal use and cannot be shared between individuals. A PI is responsible for all purchases made with the P-card attached to their project, regardless of the cardholder. Since it is your award, it is your responsibility. You can have one P-card for multiple projects or one per account, but either way, they need to balance at the end. Pauline, I'm going to pass it to you, as I know you wanted to add a little.
Thank you. Pcard applications do require grants office approval. If you do not have OTPS costs on your budget, Pcards may not be issued. Expenses on your Pcard must align with your proposed budget. Pcards are not your personal credit cards and must be used carefully. Thank you, Nick.
Okay, thanks, Pauline. The next thing we go over is the contract manager for independent contract agreements, or ICAs, and subawards. So Contract Manager is an online tool that can be used to request, manage, and track the progress of all ICAs and subawards. This is integrated with the e-procurement system for payments against these contracts. Once these payments get submitted, they follow the same procedures as regular e-payments. When a contract is submitted by the field in Contract Manager system, RF Legal will review the agreement. They will consult with the PA/APA team to ensure that these ICAs and subawards are within the budget period and are approved in the budget. The PA/APA team will review the request and provide fiscal approval to the legal department. Now, before any of these transactions can even take place, an award needs to be set up, which takes me to the next step in our agenda. Is there an executed agreement? Yes or no? First thing we need to know is what an executed agreement is. An executed agreement can be a contract, grant, an award letter, or MOU that requires no additional steps, meaning it is considered fully executed when it has received signatures from the necessary authorized officials. The requirements differ for each type of agreement, so it's important that you consult with your grants office, but most documents must be vetted through the RF legal department, and all should have the RF on behalf of the college as the awardee. So when we have an executed agreement and the PA/APA team in grants and contracts receives it, if it is not accompanied by a detailed budget that is consistent with the sponsor approved budget, or if the application or proposal is not there, they will request these items from the PI and or grants office as they are necessary for award setup. Also, the account establishment form is required for the Grants and Contracts Department in order to complete the award setup. The grants office can assist with this form because they are familiar with it. Once everything has been received and any questions that needed clarification have been answered, such as the budget details, then your account can be set up in full and your funds will be available. If there is no executed agreement, or the agreement is currently pending approval or awaiting signatures, we can only set up a skeleton account for you, meaning we set up an RF account with only basic necessary information such as the PI name and budget and start and end dates, just to name a few. Since there is no executed agreement, there is no proof of funding to set up an account. Therefore, these accounts will need either forward funding or a guarantee prior to submitting expenses. Your grants office will have to submit a request for either or both mechanisms in order for you to get reimbursed for any transactions. I do want to bring up an exception where forward funding or a guarantee is needed even when we do have an executed agreement. So to be clear, in this example, we do have an executed agreement, but forward funding or a guarantee is actually still needed. And this is when there is a performance-based account or an account that the sponsor will only fund once certain deliverables or tasks have been met or completed by the PI. In these instances, we cannot set up the accounts in full because of the stipulation with the funds being awarded. They will require forward funding or a guarantee of funds by the college. If certain tasks are not completed and we have expenses that exceed what the sponsor is responsible for paying, then the college is liable and any excess costs would need to be moved to an unrestricted account or reimbursed. The same policy applies if an agreement is pending and never gets executed. So if we have a contract up in the RF legal department and for whatever reason the terms cannot come to any agreement between the sponsor and RF or the school, and it doesn't get executed, and there are already expenses on our books, then the college is liable. This brings us to our next slide, and my colleague Raphael will go into detail regarding forward funding and guarantees.
Okay, thank you, Nick. And as Nick mentioned a few seconds ago, we have two mechanisms to fund your unexecuted contracts or awards, which is going to be either a forward funding or a guarantee. Nick also mentioned that these two tools need to be submitted through your grants office, as they will be normally the ones, I say 90% of the times, that are authorized to request such items from the Research Foundation. So if you do need either of these, you should be communicating with your GO to some extent. So what is a forward funding or a guarantee request? A forward funding request is an advance by the RF on behalf of the college to cover personnel costs only. This is not accessible to college-funded accounts, for example, CUNY miscellaneous accounts. A guarantee is an advance by the PI or the college using their unrestricted 7th ledger or 9th ledger account to pretty much cover all types of all TPS activities, summer-salary, release time, independent contract agreements, and or subawards. I want you to highlight the fact that forward funding is specifically for personnel costs, and pretty much a guarantee can cover anything other than personnel costs as well. One thing that I also want you to take away from this is the fact that all types of OTPS expenses still need to pretty much follow guidelines from the CUNY Alt Fund Expense Matrix. That's pretty important on all types of activity that take place on our 9th ledger as well too. And obviously any guidelines from sponsor agency accounts as well. Actually, go to the next slide, Nick, please.
Raphael, I have a comment.
Yes,
on the
Pauline.
forward funding and guarantee. I just want to remind everyone that forward funding usually requires campus president approval. And then the guarantees, there are funds that, as Raphael mentioned, come from the college's overhead account. So you need to check with your grants office to make sure that they have funds available to guarantee. Some campuses may not. So in addition, some campuses may have restrictions on what those guarantee funds will cover. So check with your grants office, please. Thank you, Raphael.
Thank you, Pauline. Okay, so we can move on to recovery derived accounts. We're going to touch base on what recovery derived accounts are, how do we set recovery derived accounts up, and how do we administer recovery derived accounts in general. So what are recovery derived accounts? Recovery derived accounts are funds that the college normally sets aside with funding pretty much earmarked for specific purposes. Depending on the college, they set aside funds for specific programs. These are what we call as recovery derived accounts. They're normally 9th ledger accounts, which are administered by our agency fund team and finance. And how do we set them up? Normally, we receive communication from the grants officer or the director of research of the institution or the campus. In this email, we normally get information such as the project title, the PI name, the project start and end date, the purpose of the program, and pretty much the funding source from where this funding is coming for. Normally, we fund these through the college's recovery for indirect or release time. This is communication we get from the GO, and at the point when we do get this type of communication, my team will then set up the award and communicate with the PI that has been identified by the GO. Pretty much just letting them know that their account is accessible and ready to be used. The next thing is, how do we administer these awards? For the most part, we follow the all fund expense matrix from CUNY to be able to help us identify whether expenses are allowable or not. Pretty much what that means is we take a look at the CUNY matrix and just follow guidelines against allowable expenses. And what is the CUNY matrix? The CUNY matrix is a document that CUNY has developed some time ago to help the PIs and pretty much anyone that's using various types of funding sources. I think they also have foundation, but for our point of view, we review it specifically for anything related to 9th ledger activity. This is just identifying different types of expenses and their allowability per CUNY. We follow that, again, to pretty much determine allowability of expenses on our 9th ledger accounts. You can find this document on the CUNY website by just typing all fund expense matrix in their search bar. You could also reach out to your PAs if you may not find it on the website for whatever reason, and we could facilitate a PDF version of that document if necessary as well. And that's pretty much how we administer our recovery derived accounts on our end. Nick, I think I'm gonna hand it back to you.
I just have a comment on the recovery derived accounts. So just a rule of thumb, if you can't spend it on tax levy, you can't spend it with 9th ledger. Just think of it that way. Thank you.
Thanks, Pauline.
Okay, the next thing we're going to go over is the web report. Web report is a read-only report that can be used to view the overall financial status of your award and review the web report prior to submitting expenses on your account. So the web report is a real-time look at the budget, encumbrances. It has current month expenditures, fiscal year to date expenditures, cumulative total overall expenditures for the given budget period, or pay to date activity as we call it, and available balance on each line, and available balance of the overall project. Obviously, the available balances are extremely important in determining how the remaining funds can be expended. which is why the PI should review the web report prior to submitting any expenses on their account. You need to make sure you have funds available for the purchase. If you have any questions or concerns, you can always contact your PA APA team. So how do you access the web reports? The web reports are accessible through the rfcuny.org website. They'll be under electronic tools. So when added to an account, a PI, a non-PI, or an authorized signatory will be sent an email from an administrator containing your user ID and password. So you go to the RF website, you log in with your ID, you hover over the electronic tools, and go to the web reports. If you need access to older records, you can choose web reports from the legacy system, which contains records prior to 7/1/2013. But for the sake of this presentation, we will only be using the regular web reports. And when you click on the web reports, it brings you to this next page. The web report homepage here is zoomed in to show a few things more clearly. One is the project ID field. This field is set to display the project account number, the last name of the PI, the name of the program or title, and the name of the sponsor. You'll also see a small minus sign, which we circled here, next to where it says project ID. By clicking the minus, only the PRSY or the RF project number is populated, which speeds up the system when you click the drop-down menu. The next slide will show the abbreviated field. In addition, on the left, you'll see the projects to display with options of active or closed inactive. The radio button here will default to active projects, but you can always switch it to look up an older closed or inactive account. Now we'll zoom out to show the full web report page. Now here you'll see we have the abbreviated project ID. You can always expand it again by clicking the plus then. But the second item below is the RF directory, RF report directory here. And there are 8 different types of web reports available. The budget and expense report with pending entries, which is the one listed here, is the most useful report for the PI and project staff. So this is the default report. As I just mentioned, there are 8 different reports, and the description of each of the reports is available on this page as well down below here. You can review these reports at your own leisure to determine if one of these may be helpful for you. But we're going to focus on the project budget and expense report. And now there's 2 different types of these reports. We have with pending entries and without pending entries. The default, as we said, is the with pending entries report. And we encourage you to use this report as it is the most up-to-date report. It is a real-time look at the financial status of your report. So for example, if you submitted 5 payment requests today and the APA team processed them, if you run that with pending report, you will see those transactions under the month-to-date activity as paid. You'll see the expenses there. The without pending entry report is just that. It doesn't include any pending transaction. So using that same example, if you were to submit those same 5 payment requests and the PA AP team approves it, if you run the without pending entry report, those expenses will not show up on that web report. All it's going to show you is the prior day, what was official via through the last day before the current day. So now that we kind of showed you which report to use, let's actually review how to generate the web report. Now, this is the web report main page header again that we discussed. We zoomed in again here. You'll see the project ID is once again minimized. When you click the drop-down arrow right over here, all the active projects you are associated with will populate in account number order. Once you choose one, you can generate a web report. But you will also notice down at the bottom here that there's a from month and a to month field. The from month should be left blank unless you're running a cumulative report. And that happens to be one of the 8 different types of reports. The to month will default to the current month. So if you're running it today, it would say April 2022. Please note that the web report is generated on a monthly basis. It cannot be generated for a specific date. So if you generate it today, it will show you information as of today, but you cannot run a report today for, let's say, April 3rd. Okay, so let's see what one of these project budget and expense reports with pending entries looks like. So here you go. The top of the report over here has the account information. You'll have the budget period, and on the right-hand side, you'll have the PA APA team who will be managing that project, just to name a few of the important things. This who's got access on the right here, this blue little hyperlink. If you click on that, it will show you who has access to the project. So it could have co-PIs, PIs, authorized signatories, maybe even people who just prepare e-payments or something like that. Everyone who has access to this account will show up when you click on that who's got access. Now, you'll see this big green bar in the middle here. The green bar is a quick snapshot of the account status. If it is green, it means everything is okay. If it is red, it is a warning that the budget is being underspent. And it is only red once the time elapsed, which is based on the budget period, is greater than 15% of the budget used. So a quick example, let's say your project started in January and it's now October or so. So you're about 75, 80% into your budget. So the time elapsed is around 80%. If you've only used 50% of your budget, that bar, instead of being green, will be red, because it's more of a greater than a 15% discrepancy between the two. Now, let's go over an example of an account that's on forward funding. Let's take a look what the web report looks like there. As you can see, all of the budget categories have 0. Then there is a budget line for forward funding, which I've highlighted in blue here, that reads forward funding by CUNY hyphen Lehman College. In this case, Lehman College was the one who requested the forward funding. As Raphael mentioned, forward funding can only be used to process payroll. Also, you'll notice the budget code 8107. The budget code reference will differ depending on the college. So in this case, Lehman College, their budget code associated with Lehman College is 8107. Now, if an account is on guarantee, you may see the guarantee by agency funds under code 880, which I've added to the bottom of the slide here, just to give you a quick example of what it would look like. Or it could have guarantee by restrictive funds, which is budget code 8888. Guarantees can be used, as Raphael mentioned, for OTPS items. Now, this was a sample of an account on forward funding, what it looks like, but an account where you won't see forward funding because it is not allowed is a recovery-derived account. Now, a recovery-derived account looks very similar to an account on forward funding, as it has no line item budget structure. There is no sponsor with a line item budget. As you can see, there are zeros in the budget categories referenced. The entire set of funds is listed under budget code 8998, which is the revenue budget account, which is the budget used for the recovery-derived accounts. Now, an account under, let's say, the federal, city, state, or private sector, once awards are executed, will be set up in full, and this is what the web report will look like. So this is a sample of a project budget and expense report for a fully executed contract. As you may notice, the budget categories have dollar amounts now. So right here in this blue area. Now let's zoom in on the budget codes and detail. As you can see, the individual budget lines are set up. The contract was executed, therefore the budget details have all been populated based on the approved budget in the contract. Also, I highlighted the forward funding line again, and in this case, we chose Bronx Community College just to represent another one of the colleges. And since the account was set up in full, you'll see the forward funding is no longer needed and was returned. So the budget on this forward funding line previously showed, I think, 205,000 on the previous slide, but now it shows $0. Going back to the top, you'll see there are object codes and a corresponding description for the code. The RF budget descriptions are the most commonly used descriptions. However, these descriptions on the face of the web report cannot be modified. So sometimes there could be some confusion when comparing the sponsor's budget to the RF's web report budget. Now I'm going to show a way where you can link the two budgets. When setting up the budget, we choose the budget codes that correspond to the sponsor approved budget information. In this example, we're going to focus on code 5403, which is for the specialist, which I highlighted in blue here. The sponsor had $3,978 budgeted for, let's say, a technician, but the RF maybe doesn't have a code for a technician. So how we can still link the sponsor's budget to the web report is via what we call the drill down, which can be accessed by clicking on the hyperlinks or the blue underlined items over here on the web report. So all the hyperlinked items on the web report will contain some information. Now let's focus on the drill down. Using the same example, the sponsor approved, once again, a budget for a technician for $3,978. The PA-APA team chose budget code 5403 specialist as the closest possible match. Now, when you click on the 3,978, a new window will open with this drill down information. We have included it at the bottom of the slide to show them side by side to make things a little easier. And you will see that the drill down has a detailed reference that says technician. The entering of the word technician is done manually by the PA-APA team when entering the budget in our system and can be helpful in linking the sponsor's budget with the RF's budget. If you want something specific to be put in the budget, you would need to alert your PA-APA team at the beginning of the project before they enter in anything, because once it's entered in there, it'll be there forever. Also, there may not always be a description when you click on that hyperlink. Since the process is manual, when the sponsor has no line item budget requirements or the RF description of the budget item matches the sponsor's, this information may be generic. Now, the method of adding specific details can be used for other budget items other than, say, for salary purposes. This information shows the drill down of a travel budget. Now, in this case, maybe the sponsor had an approved travel budget for $13,000 and it was very restrictive, let's say. So it may consist of different trips. If you click on the 13,182 highlighted here, the drill down, which is once again open a separate window, but we populated down below just to show, has the detailed information about the approved travel. So you'll see there's different amounts for different lines of the travel. There's registration, let's say transportation, different little breakdowns that can be entered if it's something that may be required, let's say. Okay, now I want to move on to the encumbrances and expenses. Encumbrances are funds set aside for future expenses. In this case, the encumbrance is for personnel. So an employee was appointed and their salary for the employment period was encumbered. As timesheets are submitted for this employee, the encumbrance will decrease and the expenses will increase. If we drill down on the encumbrance, so we're drilling down on this encumbrance, and it shows once again here at the bottom, we'll show it here. The information that populates will be for all employees appointed to that specific salary budget code. In this example, there was only one employee under that specific code, but if there were 3 people appointed as a coordinator, then the information for all 3 employees would be listed in that drill down. The total encumbrance and the total expense paid for this employee appears in this drill down as well as their employment period. The employee's name, budget account code, employment period, and the encumbrance amount are all pulled from the original PAF submission. The detail displayed with the payroll encumbrances in the drill down, KF will basically populate in that drill down when you click on that encumbrance. Now let's take a look at the expense side of things. The expense side of things shows different information that pertain to the expense, like a check number here, which we've redacted for the sake of this training. And also have like the check date. Unlike the budget detail information and similar to the encumbrance drill down, the expense information populated on the drill down is not something the PA/APA team can modify. So once that timesheet is completed, the expense will show up on the web report. And when you click on, let's say the month activity was for this month, you click on that, the detail that shows up, the drill down will be here, and you cannot amend that. That cannot be amended. In this example, we specifically drew down on that monthly expense containing $400. Going over the whole web report, it has, for example, just going over the whole entire web report right here would be a budget column. We have an encumbrance column, which we referenced previously, the month-to-date activity column. We also have a year-to-date activity, or in this column is for the given fiscal year. So the fiscal year goes from July to June. A PTD or pay-to-date activity column, which shows all the expenses since the start of the budget period through the current day. And then the available balance column, which shows you the available balance for each line. And at the bottom of the web report, it would show you the available balance for the whole entire project. Now, the available balance is calculated by taking the budget amount for a given line and subtracting the encumbrance and the pay-to-date activity. In the line for object code 5408, this instructional line here, there is 15,240 budgeted for instructional personnel. There is currently 2,000 encumbered, and there's 400 in the pay-to-date activity column or the total expenditures. So available balance for this specific budget line is 15,240 minus 2,000 minus 400, or the 12,840 that you'll see here. Hopefully that like Swift tutorial or the web reports will assist you with understanding them a little bit better. Now I'm quickly going to jump into another important topic, which is budgets and financial management, the do's and don'ts, and the PI's responsibilities when it comes to budget and budget compliance. The do's: keep copies of all receipts. Receipts need to be provided as backup in order to be reimbursed for purchases. There's also obviously a requirement for in case there's an audit. Know the project terms and conditions. For example, with purchasing things, you need to know what's allowable or what's not allowable. Know the various deadlines for submissions. For example, with progress reports, the PI, with help from the grants office, is responsible for submitting progress reports. Unfortunately, this is not something that we can assist with since we are not on the programmatic side of the equation. So missing deadlines could result in sponsor not paying invoices or could affect even future funding. Ask your PA/APA team if you have any questions related to your award. They are the ones managing your award, so they are here to assist you. So if you have questions related to the award, make sure to reach out to them. And follow the CUNY Matrix expenditure guidelines for recovery derived accounts. As discussed by Raphael earlier, you need to follow the matrix for recovery derived accounts. The don'ts: ask your peers on how they handle the situation on their award and expect that it will be the same for you. There's instances where we have the same sponsor, but it could be a different program with different regulations. So just because maybe a colleague had a specific expense that they got approved on their account, it doesn't mean it may be allowable on your account. So don't expect it to just be okay. Reach out if there's questions about an expense. Reach out, make sure that everyone's on the same page and whether or not it's allowable or not allowed. And don't wait until the last minute to spend your funds or submit receipts for reimbursement. Proper accounting of project expenses is important, and so is spending down funds timely. It is critical that you don't wait until the end of the project to make all your purchases, as we don't want to push a sponsor's boundaries. This is especially important when it comes to equipment. Buying equipment at the end of a project is a big red flag with an auditor. In addition, a lot of times sponsors have restrictions that you cannot purchase equipment in the last year of a project, let alone near the very end. The PI's responsibilities when it comes to the budget and budget compliance. Check to make sure the budget on the web report matches your approved budget. Check your budget before submitting expenses to avoid delays or rejection of PAFs or e-payment requests. Reach out to the sponsor for approval prior to any budget modifications. Going back to that first point, contact your PA/APA team if your budget does not match what is on the web report. It is imperative that you're both on the same page. So when we gone over before the difference between maybe a sponsor or something like the sponsor budget and the RF budget, make sure that there's no discrepancy that you can't figure out. The check in the budget before submitting expenses. If you don't have enough funds in a particular budget line or category, or enough funds available in your overall project, this will lead to rejected requests. So check your budget beforehand, as there's no point in wasting your own time submitting something that cannot be approved. And reach out to the sponsor for approval. Sponsors could have restrictions regarding certain modifications to your budget. If you plan on making a purchase or doing something that is not in line with your approved budget, then make sure to reach out to the sponsor about a budget modification before you make the purchase or do anything of the sort. If you make the purchase and then request a budget modification, it could be too late and they may reject the request. Also, make sure to submit budget modifications more than 30 days prior to the end of an award, as last-second submissions, sponsors have been known to say no if it's late in the program. So in summary, on responsibilities, like providing all documentation for your particular award, whether it is budgets or a correspondence with the sponsor that has important information like an approved budget modification or let's say a no-cost extension. With budgets, it's important that we have the latest sponsor approved budget. For example, let's say your original budget had equipment in it. You received the budget modification that the RF was unaware of, and the modification removed the equipment. On the web report, that equipment will still be there if we never received any such modification. So somewhere down the line, if let's say you look at that web report and all of a sudden you go, oh, I have equipment budgeted, and you then submit a purchase requisition to the RF to make the purchase, when we receive the request, we're going to look at that budget. That PA/APA team is going to look at the budget before they approve the purchase. If they don't, if we don't have that updated budget, we would approve the purchase, not realizing that anything was wrong. So, and purchasing something like equipment is, when it's not in the budget or even, it not an allowed expenditure, maybe, that could result in a disallowance, with the college being liable to reimburse the project for that expense. So it is imperative to forward correspondence with the sponsor regarding any approvals to your PA/APA team. This way they can effectively manage your project. Please also make sure that your grants office is included on any such communication, as they too need to be aware of everything that is going on with your project. In fact, they should be helping you with such budget modification or no-cost extension requests. So also reading over the award documentation to understand the rules and regulations is important. Now, the PA/APA team will be doing this. They already do this. So if you have any questions, they're here to help and serve you. But it's important for you, the PI, to also understand what you can and cannot do. And now the last slide is the key contacts. Project administrator and the assistant project administrator email address, as well as their phone number, is on the top right corner of the web report. I alluded to that earlier when showing at the top of that web report has some important information, and that was one of the things I mentioned. And now we have the managers of grants, contracts, and finance, a little list here. So as I mentioned, the PA/APA team will be your go-to contacts. But in case you have, let's say, a new award and you don't know who the PA/APA team is, these additional contacts down at the bottom here can also assist you. Please also keep in mind that your grants office is a liaison between yourself and the RF, and they have dealt with many situations, and they may be familiar also who the PA/APA team could be for a given award. So if you think something may fall into their purview, then you can always contact them as well. Now, I'll leave this up here for you just in case you want to jot anything down, but that's it. And now let's open it up for questions.
So we're gonna open up a Q&A. In addition to that, we've been answering questions in the chat room. So we make sure that when we do answer, it goes out to everyone. So please, if there's any questions regarding anything from any of the categories here, from the city, state, federal, etc., we have the subject matter experts on the call, willing to answer any questions you may have. So it's open. Anything you have.
Thank you so much, Nick and Sean. I don't know, you have been responding to some questions. I mean, I also do want to say that it's 1 o'clock and we usually try to be attentive to time. So if anyone does need to log off, thank you so much for attending. And the recording of this webinar will be made available on our Funding Fridays website. I actually misspoke. I didn't realize that they wouldn't be able to make the presentation available, I guess because they're making still ongoing modifications to the web report. So I guess the PowerPoint presentation will not be available, but the recording will be, and you can refer to that. So, I mean, the first question that we got, and you sort of answered this, and I'm not so how do I know which PA oversees my particular project? And it is listed on the web report, but then of course the question is, well, if you're a brand new PI, you don't even know how to access your web report. I mean, maybe Pauline, you can chime in here about, so if you have a brand new PI and they just applied for a grant and they know they received the grant, sort of like, what's the first step? Like if they come to you and they say, I got this grant, what happens now?
Well, the grants office will review the notice of award to determine what type of award it is. Then they'll determine whether it's federal, state, city, or private, and they'll reach out to the appropriate person at the Research Foundation to help create and set up the award. So they'll send the documents that are relevant, which is usually an account establishment form that the RF requires, the award notice, the proposal, the budget, but usually those things reach out to your grants office first before reaching out to the RF.
Great. I also did want to draw attention before we move on, and I was hoping that Sean would mention this, but for those of you that don't know, that aren't sort of familiar and have done a tour of the RF website, there is on the far left toolbar at the top, there is a training section of the that Sean has worked very hard on, and there's not only a bunch of sort of text-based guides to various aspects of RF activities, but also Sean has worked very hard in a number of videos, and it's all the way and it covers many of the topics that you probably have questions about are actually already up there. There's some training materials up there, such as onboarding and the PAF system and time and leave. And I mean, and some of the stuff that they talked about at the beginning, like effort reporting and certifying your effort, there's actually already some materials on the RF site. And if you look, so many of this stuff is sort of covered in other ways too. And I think that there's a lot of people that don't even know that those resources are there. So I did want to direct your attention to those.
So Effie, thank you. That was something we were going to bring up. We were going to wait. So thank you for jumping in and doing that. But we were going to wait a little more toward the end. But just to emphasize that there is on-demand training, okay? And so the on-demand training is video training. And the great thing about the video training, the table of contents in there is also based on video. So if you only want to see a certain section, you can click on it and only do that section of the video. In addition to that, we have actual manuals that people can look and read. And we're in the midst right now of completing a contract manager manual. So, I mean, that's going to be a very detailed manual. It's taken us quite a while to design because there's a lot involved. We're also beginning working on developing a training video on web reports, which will be very entailed. So that'll be over the next couple of months. So just if you go into that training site, you'll have all that information. In addition to that, the website's a great tool to use because, again, if you want to look and find all the phone numbers of all our folks, there's a full listing in the website of all our departments and all the individual people. So please, use that web report, site for because it has a tremendous amount of information. Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, there's actually a bunch of questions in the chat at the end. I was just sort of starting at the beginning, but we've gotten a couple questions in the last few minutes. Sherry Ann Ward asks, sometimes with performance-based projects, the direct cost available in the web port is not the true available balance. So when an EPAF or payment request is submitted, it is rejected. Is there a specific report we should view in order to see the actual funds available? Nick, can you answer that question? Nick, you still out there?
Yeah, so performance-based contracts, yeah, the web report will only have the funds we received. That's why a lot of times with those contracts, which we mentioned, forward funding or like guarantees are usually required for that purpose, because not all the funds are here. So we usually have the budget only set up for the funding that has arrived. So there may not be a budget, enough funds to approve a PAF. So that's where something like forward funding would come into play. The web report is really the only area to see. It'll show you what's available. So is the best tool in that aspect.
So Laura Barkovic, our friend at LaGuardia, asks, are some PRSYs ineligible for a P card, even if they have an OTPS budget? For example, city and state accounts.
I could take that. So most, if not all, New York City, New York State accounts are restricted by budget line item, which means the PA teams have to review each expenses before they're posted to ensure that they're not, over the budget or exceeding the budget, etc. The problem with P cards is once the PI uses the P card, the expense is already technically posted. So if they use a P card on, let's say, travel, but the travel budget is only $500, but the P card was spent for $900, now that $400 is already exceeding the budget, it needs to be placed somewhere else. So unless there is a particular reason as to why they specifically need a purchase card to administer the budget for that award, we usually restrict all the P card distribution for New York State and New York City accounts.
It's also restricted for PSC. You can't get a P card for PSC CUNY grants.
Correct. There's no PSC, no P cards
Correct.
on PSC grants. Usually because they're very small in nature, and also a lot of it could be personnel. So, but yes, they are restricted.
Like at Queens too, we also restrict it for some ninth ledger accounts.
Okay, so there's another question. Is there a single tax exempt form suitable for all grants? Do you mean the tax exempt? Does she mean the CUNY tax exempt?
No, RF has separate tax exempt forms. So if it's for procuring, like say, small order form for a vendor, there are various tax exempt forms. I think the best person to reach out to on that one is Paul Cole.
Who's not on this list, but he is also
No.
on RF.
He's not on this webinar, but he is the best person to reach out to regarding tax exempt forms.
So somebody asked, this is a fairly broad question, but please explain how PSC chair grants can be used. So do you know the accounts that are set up for PSC chairs?
So yes, I'll take that one. I'm assuming they're
great.
referring to the department chair grants. In short, there's a wide variety of things that you could use them for. My best recommendation is kind of reviewing the PSC CUNY grants in general. The common expenditures include computers, laptops, research supplies, books, travel. There's really a lot that you could do with the grant. One of the best sections is kind of just going over the pre-award page for the PSC CUNY budget, since the chair grants follow the same guidelines. You could always give me a call too, as well, to discuss if you have any like particular ideas about your own grants. But it's just kind of a broad area of what you could do with those grants.
I can certainly make available, if we can't make the presentation available, I will definitely make available the names of all the people that participated in this presentation, just so you can remember who to reach out to. We have another question. Could you please review the summer salary section? Does the money need to be transferred to the respective campus to pay for summer salary. Can you just briefly give an overview of how the summer salary system works?
Hi, so this is Rafael, and I think I could answer this one. Yeah, so after summer salary is recovered on the grant side, it is pretty much set aside on a separate ninth ledger account. Eventually, what does take place is that we do a reconciliation of this at least 2 times a year. Normally, the first time is shortly after December or January. We reconcile summer salary. What we look at the Research Foundation for is to make sure that one, faculty have certified effort related to summer salary, and two, that whatever payment records that CUNY shares with us is tying on a one-to-one match versus what we actually recovered for summer salary. Once we meet those 2 requirements, those 2 criteria, we process a reimbursement to CUNY Central. And we also communicate the detail behind what is being reimbursed by campus related to summer salary for the prior year or anything residual to that as well.
Great, thank you, Rafael. Someone asked, Anne-Marie asked, is a system being developed so we can see when a PO, a purchase order over $5,000 is processed? Anyone?
Well, I can jump in on that one.
Okay.
You know, we're in the process of evaluating, you know, the procurement system completely. So there's a lot of things on the drawing board, and I think that is one of them. But again, you know, it takes time to evaluate every single option that you have and how it impacts things. So we are really looking at the procurement system as we speak to see what we can do to enhance it. So, I mean, all I can tell you may not be the perfect answer, but, you know, in due time, things will be changing with the procurement system because that's one of the things that we're looking at.
Sean, since you're already on here, the next question is about, is there a training video for employees to submit timesheets on the website?
On the timesheets, yeah, on the timesheets. Now, it was dedicated for, you know, the supervisor, you know, the PIs to review this, but it's almost identical as far as filling out the timesheets. But we can definitely put something together for that. But if they go in, they can go in and look at that. If they can go in and look at the training that we have, it's almost identical as far as filling out the timesheet. So they could look at that. The only difference would be, you know, the approval process.
Yeah, there is. If you look in the training section, there is a whole section on time and leave. And I think what Sean was referring to, there's a time and leave payroll, which submit and approving timesheets. And he says, I guess it works too if you're an employee and you're trying to submit timesheets.
Yeah, well, we can adapt something to change that around for you, though.
I have a problem hiring a student part-time who is already hired for other CUNY campuses. Are there any restrictions on hiring a part-time worker? The work hours combined is less than 19 hours a week. So what are the rules on across multiple campuses for hiring?
Depends. You'd have to check with your grants office.
Yeah.
And you'd have to, and then also the grants office may have to check with HR at the RF, because that student, if they're working across different campuses, their combined hours, if they go over 19 hours per week, combined on all campuses, fringe benefits increase on all grants. Doesn't matter which campus they're on. All grants will be affected with the fringe benefits. So they would have to be very sure as to how many hours they're working at the other campuses in order for them to know how it's going to affect their grant.
And the best person to contact that is your HR campus coordinator. So whatever school you're coming from, you have that question. They'll be able to answer that in detail for you.
So we have a question. Where do you submit the request when requesting money from a private grant? if the project is international, is the check made by the PI or the local contractor? I'm actually not quite sure what this question is. Is this?
I'm a little confused with that one, but if they are requesting a private grant, it depends on the guidelines that for that sponsor. And then if the project is international, the check, again, it depends, because if it's an international entity, they usually have a contract. So those things are usually identified in the contract. So that depends. They should speak to their grants office.
Thank you.
That's also a legal question too.
Yeah. It says the chairs can also, actually, that's the end of the questions. I thought there were more questions here, but that seems to be most of the questions in the chat. So if there's no other questions, we also did, I mean, we can make the chat available, I guess, on the website. I've done that in the past, but there's some more information in here in terms of contacts, but we can also just put together a contact list for all the people mentioned in the various different departments at the RF. But that seems to be all our questions. So unless anyone else has anything to submit to the chat, I just want to thank Sean and Pauline. Sorry, the PowerPoint, no, it sounds like Sean says that he doesn't want to make the PowerPoint presentation itself available because things are still changing in terms of the web report. But
so what happens with the PowerPoint, especially because you got a lot of web reports here, we're in the midst of changing a lot on the web reports, and the last thing we want to do is have information out there that's going to be invalid. So
well, maybe we could just take the pages that have the web report in them, because there was a lot of sort of just like steps and information in there. If you take out the parts that you think are going to change.
Well, like I said, within a short period of time, though, we're going to have a complete video training on web reports. So it's going to be very detailed. So you're going to have actual, a training video. So we're in the midst of, we're putting the scripts together right now. To do these things, it takes a lot of time. It's like shooting a mini sitcom. So there's hours and hours of recording, and then for literally a 20-minute, training video, to like about 100 hours of editing time. So I got to edit everything once I video it, and I got to do voiceovers and things like that. So it's just going to take time, but it's on literally our next project that we will be working on.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Sean, and thank you, Marek and Raphael and Nick and Millie and all the other people whose names I'm forgetting. I feel like I'm at the Academy Awards. And thank you, Pauline. So I thank you so much for turning up for our Funding Fridays. Please come to our next one on limited submissions on May 20th, and do not hesitate to reach out to me about any questions or ideas. I'm always here for you in the Office of Research to help you achieve your research goals. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a great Friday and a great weekend.
Thanks, Effie and Remy and everybody.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you, everyone.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye now. Thank you for inviting us.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you.